Hello, singers. Today I'm going to be addressing mainly the baritones, but hopefully the rest of you can get something out of it too. I want to look at the Prologue to Pagliacci, and because it's such a famous baritone aria, every baritone wants to learn it. Only some baritones can sing it. And I want to look at it in a way which is sort of like a coaching session, but it's also a way of learning a piece quickly and thoroughly. We always used to think that we should learn the notes first, and then learn the words, and then learn what the words meant, and then try to flesh it out as you went along. That's a bass-backwards approach. You will take a long time, and you'll only partly learn it. Let me give you an example. I was doing Falstaff one time, high up in the mountains, where the air was very thin and very dry. Of course, it was hard for me with my heart to work in that kind of environment, but I was doing Falstaff. And they had brought in a very famous baritone to do Ford. He had done Ford all over the world. He'd done in many of the world festivals, and I knew him from a long time ago when I was an apprentice and he was already a big star. But so they hired him. They knew that it was going to be important to have a solid Falstaff and Ford, and then they would cast the rest of the opera with up and coming young singers, some apprentices, some young beginning career singers, and they thought they could do that. And it turned out well. It was very well received, and Falstaff became a good role for me, but it's not really quite my cup of tea because it sits a little bit too low for me. Verdi wrote Falstaff in a lower tessitura than he wrote his other major Verdi baritone roles, and even basses sing Falstaff very successfully. Ezio Flagello was a fabulous Falstaff. Other basses, Fernando Corena, but you had to have a special kind of voice to do Falstaff. At any rate, I was with Ford, and we were exchanging lines together, and he delivered a line to me which I have to respond to, and he delivered the line with such a crazy intonation, I didn't quite know what kind of a choice to make to respond. And so after rehearsal was over, I got his eye and I said, "Can you tell me, by the way, what you meant when you said this phrase to me?" And I repeated the phrase, and he said, "Oh, I don't know. I'll have to go look up the words and see." And I thought, what? You sung Ford all over the world, and you don't know what the words mean? And then I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I thought, well, maybe it's a hard sentence structure, and it just didn't sink in when he was learning it. But it was an easy sentence structure. It was, per gli dei se non ridesse, ti sconquassere. By the gods, per gli dei, if you hadn't returned, I would have squashed you. It was not a difficult, per gli dei se non ridesse, ti sconquassere. It was not a hard line to translate. So I thought, how can that be? So I paid a little bit more attention to all of his lines when we were in rehearsal, in blocking. And come to notice, he sang every line the same way. There was no dramatic beat. There wasn't any intention. He was just singing the notes and rattling the words. That astounded me, because this guy had done Ford all over the world, at leading opera festivals. And he sang E sogno o realtà like it was Parisiamo.
E sogno o realtà.
Out the side, you know. And everything was the same. I thought, what is this? This is not opera. Something is wrong here. He's not being a character. He's just himself singing notes and rattling out words. So I tried to compensate for that by making all of my responses to Ford very, very rich in the choices I made for the dramatic beat, which shapes the phrase that answers his questions. And it turned out okay, but I learned a big lesson that sometimes even very famous singers can be taught badly on how to learn a role, sing it all over the world, and not get called on for the stupidest errors that we wouldn't allow an apprentice to get away with. We wouldn't allow an apprentice to go on stage and just to speak things without, or to sing things without any meaning.
Parisiamo, io la lingua, ella il pugnale.
Yeah, we're not going to allow that. So, a lot of you have been learning your arias like that. Stop it. The first thing you do is you read the text in rhythm and with whatever meaning the word brings to you. If you don't speak Italian, then you have to look up every word, put it above, in English, every word, and learn what they all mean, and then drill yourself. I use flashcards if I'm doing a language I don't speak in. For example, I sing in Russian, but I only speak a little Russian. Говорю немножко. So if I'm singing a complex Russian piece, I'll have flashcards, and on one side will be the Russian word, on the other side will be the English meaning. So this side says Bože, this side says Lord. And then you use the flashcards to drill the meaning of the word into your brain. Until finally, when you sing Bože, you don't have to think, oh yeah, it means Lord. It's already in your brain, and you're thinking in the language by that time. So maybe that's the way you'll have to do this if you don't speak Italian.
Si può, signore. Signore, scusatemi se da sol mi presento. Io sono il Prologo. Poiché in scena ancora le antiche maschere mette l'autore, in parte vuol riprendere le vecchie usanze e a voi di nuovo inviami. Ma non per dirvi come pria. Le lacrime che noi versiamo son false e degli spasimi e dei nostri martir. Non allarmatevi. No! L'autore ha cercato invece pingervi uno squarcio di vita.
Let me do that again.
No, no.
L'autore ha cercato invece pingervi uno squarcio di vita.
Egli affermassima solo che l'artista è un uomo e che per gli uomini scrivere deve.
E davvero ispiravasi. Un nido di memorie. In fondo all'anima cantava un giorno.
Ed ei con vere lacrime scrisse e singhiozzi il tempo gli battevano.
Dunque, vedrete amar, siccome s'amano gli esseri umani. Vedrete di l'odio
I tristi frutti del dolore gli spasimi, urli di rabbia udrete e risa ciniche. E voi, piuttosto che le nostre povere gabbane d'istrioni, le nostre anime considerate, poiché siamo uomini
di carne ed ossa,
e che di quest'orfano mondo, al pari di voi, speriamo l'aere.
il concetto vi disse. Or ascoltate come gli svolgo.
Andiamo, incominciate.
Now that's the prologue. From just the meaning of the words and the rhythm that the words are cast in there. And just the meaning and of the words and the rhythm that it is utilized, that will begin to give you some hint of character that you can work then and come to some agreement between you and the stage director if he's going to watch you. So then, after you've done that, you have a great deal of investment already in learning the piece. Now, I know what you're saying, baritones. The prologue to Pagliacci requires a high A flat at the end and a high G at the very end of the recit. And what are you going to do about that? Well, I've already done a little workshop on high notes and talked about this particular ending quite a bit. But I would just bring it to your attention that the high notes which have become customary in most places in the world were not written. Instead, Leoncavallo has simply written
E che di quest'orfano mondo al pari di voi speriamo.
That's the it's written to go down like that. And at the very end,
Andiamo, incomincia.
and then it goes down. That's the way he had it written at first. And it was performed that way many times in the 19th century. But at some point, some good baritone discovered that would be a nice place for a high A flat, and somebody else discovered at the ending would be a real good place for a high G, and they did it. And Leoncavallo was around during this time to act as an arbiter and a judge. If he hadn't liked it, it wouldn't have continued. Obviously, he felt, like Verdi did, that the interpolation of these high notes added to the music, to the verismal quality of the music and the drama. So all of the high notes that were put into Verdi's operas were done with his permission, with his sanction, and Leoncavallo sanctioned these high notes at the end of the prologue. Even Chaliapin sang the part of Tonio. And you say, well, how do you do that? He's a bass. Well, the tessitura is still pretty high, even if you don't do the high notes. But a bass can sing it through. Chaliapin was a very high bass, for one thing. He had high notes but no low notes. So it fit him pretty good. But in Germany, there evolved another approach, and that is the baritone usually didn't have a high A flat. German baritones many times don't. And so there evolved a tradition in Germany for
al pari de
going only to an F and not an A flat. Going to the F allowed some sense of climax there, similar, if not as good, as the A flat. And then at the end, the baritone, if he had a G, he could put the G on at the end and hold it a long time and still get a good effect. And so that was generally the way it was done in Germany. In fact, I've got a CD of a young Hans Hotter singing the prologue, auf Deutsch, and at the end, I believe he puts a high F. He may have just sung it as it's written down, but I believe he put a high F. But that was, so that is still a possibility, baritones. If you want to learn the piece now and put a high F in there and say it's going to be a placeholder until I work on my A flat and get it ready for show, that's not a bad way to approach it. If you're singing in Europe, you can sing the F there. People will still respect it. Don't you dare try it in North America or even Italy. In Italy, you might get tomatoes thrown at you. You would certainly get booed. But in North America, people don't know as much, and also North Americans seem to like the going back to the original, even if the original is not as flashy. So I hope that makes you feel a little bit better about the high note and how you're going to handle it. But please refer back to my little posting on how to sing high notes, and we go into how to get up to that A flat really quite in some detail. So, how do we learn a piece? We learn it first by learning the words and the rhythms. Then we go back to the method, if you use the method. I don't care if you don't. I use the method. So I create the character. You will have been given quite a few clues about the character from the music and the words and from an understanding of the story. Okay? And let me explain to you, if you don't know, none of these people are very nice. Tonio's not a nice guy. He's very rough. He's a bunco artist. And he's very willing to engineer the murder of Nedda by Canio just because Nedda cried out and pushed him away when he was trying to hit on her. So, and Canio, he's not a nice guy either. He's a pretty rough customer. And if you think of as Canio and Tonio as old war buddies, you know, and they've got this kind of camaraderie that comes from being in a foxhole together. And they come back from the war and they wonder what they're going to do for a job. And one of them comes up with the idea, well, why don't we give a show of some sort? And we can go just take it around. So they do that, and they figure they need at least one woman, but they don't know who that'd be. And Canio is driving the cart one day in a village, and he sees a young girl by herself. She's obviously lost or homeless from the way she looks. And he stops and says, hey, you want something to eat? You hungry? And she gladly says yes. And he takes her and lets her sit in their wagon. He brings her something to eat and something to drink. Then he says, you can travel with us if you want. We've got a part in our play that you could take if you wanted. And it sounds like a great opportunity to her. You know, she's probably in her late teens, and Canio is probably in his mid-40s, maybe even 50. So Canio is thinking of what a nice arrangement this is going to be for him. He's just picked up a chick who's off the grid, and he might keep her around. She might be real nice and to snuggle up to in the evenings. She doesn't know exactly what to do. She's a waif. She's a lost child, a lost teenager. She's homeless. She has no means of support, no family. Canio says, why don't you take a role in our traveling theater? You can stay and live with us. You'll get your 3 squares a day and plenty to drink. And she says, okay, we can give it a try. Sure. And so they give her a copy of the play and say, these are your lines, and this is how it goes, and this is what you do. And of course the play is the Harlequin play that is done in Act 2. So that begins to make a little different kind of setting now. We're talking about this. And where do we get this? Well, Canio tells us a story. He tells us a story in his big aria in the second act. And it's all his way, of course, but that's his viewpoint. I took you in when you were starving. I gave you a house and a name, and this is how you repay me. You see, because after a while, he considers her his common law wife, you know. And she's been sleeping with him all this time they've been together, but, you know, she doesn't really want to. She's not in love with Canio. Canio is in lust with her, but she's in a situation. She has gotten herself in deep into a situation. And when she meets this guy in a town, he's a traveling salesman, she meets this guy and he's really nice to her. And that's Silvio. And so they make it a point that whenever the troupe is in Silvio's area, that they'll get together, they'll meet up. So Silvio becomes Nedda's one escape, temporary escape from this kind of abuse that she's locked into with Canio. In the meantime, Tonio, remember he's deformed, and you should play him that way in the prologue as well. You should be costumed in the prologue, have a hunchback, and begin to have a character. The character has to come, of Tonio, has to come through even when you're doing the prologue. Very important. So we begin to see what kind of a situation there is among these people playing these parts of Canio, Nedda, Tonio, and so you begin to get a sense of how you can sing the prologue, but knowing all these different kinds of interactions. So you create your character, that's my point. So then you have the character, and then you begin making dramatic choices for intentions, the way that the method tells you. So you look at the phrases, and you analyze them by what Stanislavski called the beats, the places where intentions are chosen. You have the breath, the intention as the dramatic beat, and then you have the musical beat. So the dramatic beat has to be before the musical beat if it's to be realistic. So if I say the words, I'm going to go to the door now. You see, the thought was first, the beat, the intention was there, and then the words came. And there could be 1,000 different intentions. Like I could say, I'm going to go to the door now. See, there's a totally different beat. Or, I'm going to go to the door now. So the beats that you choose are dramatic intentions for the phrase. And you'll want to make those choices and then find substitutions that will enable you to give the illusion that Tonio, that you have become Tonio, and that Tonio is really a character on that stage. So if we look just at some of the beats, they're pretty easy to determine where they happen by the musical phrasing. So here's one. Io sono il prologo. There's the thought, the intention, the breath. Io sono il prologo. That's one beat you could have. You could have others.
Io sono il prologo.
Totally different. Or Io sono il prologo. It just depends on how your character wants to say that, and that's what you choose. And your choices have to be consistent with the character that you're creating. If you've got Tonio as a rough guy like he is, who's a little bit of a bunco artist and a little bit of a rapist sometimes, you wouldn't want him to make a choice like, Io sono il prologo. You see, people think you're crazy if you make crazy choices. But given who we've just talked about, Tonio, a good one would be,
Io sono il prologo.
And then right here, it calls for a beat, an intention. Poiché in scena ancora le antiche maschere mette l'autore. New beat. In parte vuol riprendere. See? The idea of how I'm going to say that registers first, is seen in the face, and then comes through the word. In parte vuol riprendere le vecchie usanze. E a voi, new beat, see? E a voi, di nuovo inviami. New beat.
ma non per dirvi come pria. Nubit, le lacrime che noi versiamo son false.
Nubit.
Dei dispasimi, Nubit, e dei nostri martir, non allarmatevi.
Nubit.
No!
No. Nubit.
L'autore ha cercato invece pingere uno squarcio di vita.
Nubit.
Egli per massima sol che l'artista è un uomo.
Nubit.
E che per gli uomini scrivere deve.
Nubit.
E dal vero ispiravasi.
Nubit.
Un nido di memorie in fondo all'anima cantava un giorno.
Nubit.
Ed è con vere lacrime scrisse e singhiozzi il tempo gli battevano.
Nubit.
Dunque, Nubit, vedrete amar, siccome s'amano gli esseri umani.
Nubit.
Vedrete dell'odio
Nubit.
e tristi frutti,
Nubit.
del dolor gli spasimi,
Nubit.
Urli di rabbia udrete.
Nubit.
e risa ciniche.
Nubit.
E voi, piuttosto,
Nubit.
che le nostre povere gabbane di strioni,
Nubit.
le nostre anime considerate,
Nubit.
poiché siamo uomini di carne ed ossa,
Nubit.
e che di quest'orfano mondo, al pari di voi,
Nubit.
spiriamo l'aere.
Nubit. Il concetto vi dissi. Nubit.
Or ascoltate come è svolto.
Nubit.
Andiamo.
Nubit.
Incominciare.
Etc. Incominciate. So, you understand now the whole idea of the way the dramatic beat shapes the phrase and how the dramatic beat has to be a conscious choice that is drawn from your character and which enriches the character even more. Now you will be able to learn a piece much quicker this way, and when you get on stage to start rehearsals, you won't have to think, oh my God, what's my line? Or you won't get caught like Mr. Famous Baritone singing a line which he's sung for probably 100 times, and he didn't know what it meant. I'll have to go back and check the text. How about just read the sentence? It was a real plain, simple sentence in Italian 101. Per gli dei, se non ridesse, hic sconquassere. By the gods, if you had returned, I would have squashed you. Now, that's not hard to learn. How dare you go across the world and sing a great role without understanding? You ought to be penalized. You ought to have to give back the salary they paid you. And how dare you say to me, as one baritone did,
I've performed Rigoletto over 400 times in my career.
And one time I even really cried.
and my mouth just hit the floor. Because he was saying to me, he could he could perform a role as great as King Lear, and he only cried once. He only found tears once in 400 performances? What kind of an actor is that? It's no actor, I'll tell you. And you didn't really perform Rigoletto for 400 times if you only cried once. You went through the gestures and maybe you sang the notes, but you did not perform King Lear operatically and only cry once. Zip my mouth shut of the words I want to call him. This is a real guy. He's dead now. I won't give you his name. He's a Canadian. He was called Mr. Rigoletto in his lifetime. And once when I was a beginning singer, an apprentice, I once sang Marullo to one of his performances of Rigoletto. And I will never forget it. But it's not because it was such a great performance that I wouldn't forget it. How dare you? How dare any of us take our performance, take our role as opera singer and actor so lightly, so presumptuously, that we fail to either sing or act well. We just throw it out there and take the money and run. We hold imaginary trays and we claim we're acting. Or we put one hand up for high notes and one hand down for low notes, and we consider that dramatic verity. How dare we? I'm not talking to you, my friends, any of the baritones who have ever worked with me, and hopefully no baritones who have ever done that. I'm giving you the illustration as a word of warning. How easy fame can make you forget your art. Here's a man who had reached the top of his art form, reached the top of his salary cap, sang at the Metropolitan Opera and many, 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 many other places. And yet, he was not an artist, not even a mediocre artist. He wasn't an artist at anything because of his attitudes of, oh, let's give him this, oh, let's give him this. Yeah, one time I was just giving him this, and even one time I cried. I couldn't believe it. After all, it's just an opera. This reminds me of a baseball story. You have to understand that I'm an old baseball player and an umpire. But Tommy Lasorda told this baseball story, and it's very appropriate to what I'm talking about here. So Tommy's the manager, and his team is up at bat, and the guy hits a good double, and he's stretching it into a triple. He slides into the bag. The third baseman tags him. It looks like he's in there, but the umpire calls him, yeah. And Tommy Lasorda jumped out of the dugout and starts jumping up and down and swearing at the umpire and telling him, he's everything except a child of God. And the umpire, who's trying to cool things down, because he doesn't really want to throw Tommy out, He said, cool down, Tommy. Tommy, take it easy. It's just a game. And Lasorda went ballistic. He said, a game? It's just a game? To you, maybe, it's just a game. To me, it means something. Well, listen. Maybe to you, you're just singing, and maybe at once out of every 400 times, you'll really cry. After all, it's just opera. I feel like Tommy Lasorda coming out of that dugout and screaming, just an opera! Just an opera! The art means something to me! And that's where we close. Bye.